Sharing my screen. I mean, I'm now recording. All right, guys. So let me just, before we get started, I just want to say one thing. So basically, I don't know if everyone is here when I said it before. So you might have received an email saying you were absent when you weren't actually. So do me a favor. Um, if you receive that email, message me directly on Slack, and I'll set it right. Okay. If you ever receive that email, tell me what day it said you were absent and tell me like that you were there. Okay, just in case, just so I get everybody. Okay, I don't want to just like I don't want to like forget anybody. So just do me a favor, Slack me directly. Okay, if you get that email, I already said it straight for yesterday, but I might have missed somebody. So just Slack me and say that yeah I was here yesterday. Okay. Um. Okay. Besides that, let's get into arrays. So basically, I hope everyone did okay with scope. I hope everyone was okay with that. The workshop was a little tricky. The workshop was a little confusing, a little brain teasery. So we're going to um, not go over some problems from that, and we're just going to get right into arrays. Okay. So with further ado, any questions before we get started? All right, dope.
I have a question. Quick question.
Yeah, what's good?
Is there a difference between plus plus I and I plus plus?
Yeah. So I plus plus. Do you remember? Here, let me share my screen and I'll go over it. So one second. So do you remember? Everyone can see my screen.
Yeah.
So do you remember how I said that I plus equals 1 and I plus plus? I plus plus is
Incrementer.
shorthand for this, but not really. That's because they do different things. Like, sure, what this does, this reassigns I to what it was plus 1, right? But you could do this for like 10 or 5, right? Or 3. This is specific to 1. However, what this does, this actually returns a value. I plus plus returns the value, what it was, and then it increments it. So if you ever do like return I plus plus, what you'll get is I, but it won't be incremented because this returns a value. If you do return plus plus I, it increments it first and then it returns I. Okay? That's the main difference. It's slight, but it's there. It's a difference. Good on that? Dope. All right. So let's go over arrays. What are arrays? Const my array equals open close square bracket. What I just wrote is an empty array. This is an array, okay? And arrays are awesome. Arrays are basically ordered list-like structures, okay? That means everything is in order. If I put, and you can put anything you want inside of here. Arrays can hold any type of data, right? We can have hello, we can have true, and notice how they are being separated by commas. Okay, this is syntax. This is array syntax. I can have 55. I can have another array, an empty array. I can have an empty object. We'll cover that in 2 days, but this is an empty object pretty much. And I can even have a function. Arrays can hold anything, okay? So, how do I access these elements though? How do I access them? You can think of dealing with arrays like strings, okay? So arrays, if I say console.log my array, what we get is the entire array, right? So, how do I get that hello? The same way we get the first character in a string, array at 0. Arrays, like strings, are indexed, okay? So all of these indexes, and they behave the same way, right? This is index 0, index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at index 5, we have the function. At index 6, we have nothing. Oh, wait, my bad. Undefined, right? There's nothing there. Same thing as you try to access a character that doesn't exist in a string if their indexes don't go that long. So how can I tell how many are in here, right? My array dot length. Arrays have a length property, right? Just like strings. Is everybody with me so far? So the main important thing to realize about this, though, is this is no longer just like, you know how strings, these are all just letters, basically, right? Basically, they're all characters. I mean, yeah, I could put a 7 in here, but it's still a string character, right? Arrays can hold multiple things. I can hold true, 55, another array, hello. I can hold even undefined, right? I can hold null. I can hold not a number. I can hold anything, okay? Anything I want will go inside my array. Cool? So how can we tell if something is an array or not, right? What is an array's type?
It's a list of data points, but I'm getting an error in my Replit when I do the console log index item number 1.
I could take a look at yours later if you want.
Get later.
Yeah. So he's right though. Arrays are lists, right? If you look at another language, like let's say Python, they have something like this too, but they're literally called lists, right? But in JavaScript, they're called arrays. So an array, type of, should be an array, right? No, it's object, okay? So this is a little tricky. How can I ever tell if something is really an array? Because type of object is object, and also type of null is object. So this type of thing is actually pretty useless when it comes to arrays, right?
The array bracket, that's the best thing we know.
What?
The array bracket, the square brackets we use to show an array as an array.
Yeah, when we originally define it, but how can I tell if a variable is an array or not, right? Like in my function. We can do this by accessing the global array object. Yes, there is a global array object. Dotting off it is array. IsArray is a method of the global array object, right? And these methods are actually functions, so we have to invoke them. And these take an argument, right? It returns true or false based off of what you passed in there. If it is an array, it is true. If it's not an array, like 99, we get false. Easy enough, right? Empty array, true. My array, false. I mean true, sorry. Is everybody with me so far? Easy enough, right? So, I said that arrays have indexes, right? So doesn't that mean that we can access each and every one of these things with a loop? For let I equals 0, I is less than my array.length, right? Just like strings. This is very similar to strings, right? Then we could say console.log my array at I. Right? So here we get hello, true, 55, empty array, empty object, function, undefined, null, not a number. How are we doing? Does this make sense? What if I also, if there was a string in here, I wanted to log out every letter and not the actual string. Let's change our function. If type of well, let's pull this out first so it's easier. Let current equal my array at I, right? This will be the current value. So type of current is equal to string. We will do something. Else, we will do console.log current, right? But how are we going to do this? What if we just did another loop? This will work, right? Right. We say if the type of this current thing is a string, we will do another for loop. We will say I is defined inside of this for loop, set it to 0, go until the current dot length, and we know it has a dot length property because it's a string, and we just console.log current of I. However, what if I didn't do this? What if I didn't do this, right? And I didn't have current. I had my array at I, right? I would have to do my array at I, but this I is actually going to be this I, not this I anymore, right? So this is what I was talking about before. This should be a different letter. So now I know that my array at I is talking about the same thing here, right? But how do I access that letter? Just like that. My array at I will be equal to hello, right? So when we say my array of I at j, think of it as hello at j, right? That's how you go deeper into nested indexed things, right? Like nested arrays and an array with a string, right? That's how we get these characters, I of j, right? So if we run this, it'll be, oh, whoops, where am I doing? Oh, whoops. The same thing. Any questions on this? Okay. Let me comment this out.
Wait, what do we use current for?
Excuse me?
Before you replaced current with my array, what was current for?
Current was just pulling out my array of I.
Oh.
And just renaming it so it's like, this is the current variable.
Ah.
You know what I mean?
I guess a placeholder.
And then down here, since we're not using my array of I, we can just do current of j, right? So it doesn't look like we have the double brackets. So it's a little nicer to read. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So current would just be the same as my array.
My array of I.
Okay, my array of I.
Right? Before I did let current equal my array of I. So current will be the current variable we are on in the loop, right? Cool. So, does everyone see how looping through an array, though, is very similar to looping through a string?
I gotta go. We gotta use the index.
Exactly, because arrays have indexes just like strings, right? Starting at 0 and going on until you're at the length -1. It's the same deal. Same shebang, all right? Good? Okay. Now I want to talk to you about some new methods that you guys are going to be using. So arrays, like, you know how string has two uppercase, two lowercase, right? Those are string methods. Arrays have methods themselves. They are, well, four of the big ones, four of the most useful ones are push, pop, shift, and unshift. Okay? Let me comment this out too. Const push array equals this, right? How do I put something in here? I can't do plus equals 2. I just can't do that, okay? That is not how you add things into arrays, okay? You do that with the push method, okay? If I do console.log push array, then I do push array dot push, and I pass in hello world, and then I console.log push array. What we get, we have nothing in here, and we have hello world done. Then if I do push array dot push 8, 8 goes on to the back. That's what push does. Push pushes whatever you pass into it into the back of the array. Okay? Okay? Does that make sense? How do I put things onto the front of the array? That would be shift. And the reason we call this shift is because if I shift in like false, no, I'll shift in 0. If I shift in 0 and I console.log my push array, right? Before I had hello world. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not. Oh wait, my bad. It's unshift. My bad. Ignore me. Sorry, I made a mistake. So hello world we have at index 0, and then 8 at index 1. Since I'm unshifting 0 into this array, that means all of these things that were in there before had to shift their indexes 1 over, okay? Sorry, it's not unshift. It's unshift, not shift. Sorry, my bad. Even this naming kind of confuses me sometimes. Unshift is how you add things to the front of the array, and push is how you push things onto the back. Okay? So how do we take things off? How do we take things off of the array? Off the back and off the front? Well, I just showed you a little bit before. It's shift, right? Shift is how you take things off of the front. And shift, once you take everything off the front, everything has to shift one place to the left, right? So if we do, and it returns a value, right? Let what am I equal push array dot shift. I'm just going to change this to my array. What am I equals my array dot shift, and you don't pass anything into it, right? We console.log.
This is a silly question, but how did you highlight all of those things and then change all of them?
Oh, a magician never reveals his secrets.
Hey, that's not fair.
So basically, you just highlight this, and you do on a Mac, it's Command D. You just do it over and over again. On, I think, Windows, it's Control D. Usually, when people tell you shortcuts on a Mac, the equivalent in Windows is Control instead of Command.
So that's D as in
D as in
Dog.
David.
Cool.
D as in disaster. So, yeah, so that's how you do that. And it's really useful. So, what am I is now going to be set equal to myArray.shift. And then I'm going to console.log myArray, and I'm going to console.log what am I, okay? And I won't console.log this. Okay? But I'll move this down here. Aha. So basically, we console.log myArray here, so we get 0 hello world 8, because that's what it was, right? Then we do what am I is going to be equal to myArray.shift, and then we console.log myArray again. And you see that the 0 is gone, right? The 0's gone, it was shifted off. And we console.log what am I, and we get that 0. So if I do what am I is now going to be reassigned to myArray.shift again. Now we only get the 8 here. Wait, what is the 0? What does shift actually return? I always forget this. So this is an amazing website. I told you about it before. So shift method removes the first element from array and returns that removed element. This method changes the length of the array. Returns undefined if the array is empty. So why?
I think you have a lowercase I and one.
Oh. Duh. Okay. Cool. Does this make sense? Shift shifts one element off the front and returns that element. What does pop do? Right? Let's say I don't do this.
Sorry,
And-
can I
and-
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So at the point where you define, you have like the let what am I equals myArray.shift. Am I correct in understanding that like even defining it already does the action of the shift, right?
What do you mean defining it already?
Sorry. Yeah, I guess it's just like, when I just look at row 42, like I would just think that it was like basically defining what mi is.
Yeah, so we're declaring this variable what am I, right?
Yes.
And what are we setting it equal to? We're setting
Yeah,
it equal to this array dot shift invoked. So this is pretty much being set to a function call, right?
Mhm.
Because shift is actually a function. It just lives on the global array object, okay? So shift, what does shift return? Shift returns the first element of the array, right?
Yeah.
So what am I is actually just going to be the first element. And
Yeah.
shift, this exists off of every array. You can do this on any array, okay?
Sorry, I get that. I do get that. I think I was just trying to understand, but just by like typing in myArray.shift with that thing, is that invoking that at that line as well? So is it already?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
So right here, when this thing runs, when we assign this to this, my array is losing 0.
Yeah.
It loses 0 on line 42.
But then why are we? But then when we're console logging my array in 44, sorry, maybe I'm just. What was the original array? The original array was
My array is this first line up here.
right. Oh, I'm sorry. That's line 40. I think that's what. Okay, that's
Yeah.
line 40.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So now we have the array of here, right? So let's get that 8. My array dot pop console dot log my array.
What does pop do again?
I didn't go over it yet. Pop too many console logs. This is a mess. Sorry. So here, after we shifted, so before we started the pop, we had hello world and 8, right? Then we say what am I? We're reassigning what am I to be myArray.pop invoked. What pop does is it pops off the last thing in the array. And it returns that value. So my array now is just hello world with no 8 at the end. And what am I was reassigned to what pop returns, which is the last element, which is 8. So pop pops off the last element in an array. Does this make sense? Pop, shift, unshift, push, okay? These are methods that you need to remember to use. And you will, because you're going to be using them a lot. Because every time, you're plus equaling a string, you're going to be pushing, okay? Does that make sense? Push actually also does return something too. Oh, whoops. If I do let what the heck equal to myArray.push, and then I'll just console.log what the heck here, and I'll comment this out, I'll comment this out, I'll comment this out, I'll comment this out, right? And if I just console log what the heck here, what am I going to get? I get 1. So, but if I console.log my array, you see that it was pushed in there, right? Push returns the new length of the array after you push in that thing, okay? Okay? Same thing goes with unshift. Any questions?
Wait, did we cover shift yet?
Yeah, shift's right here. Shift shifts off one element off the front of the array and returns that element. Opposite of pop.
How did you get that 1 at the top of the screen?
When I console.log what the heck is set equal to the return value of myArray.push hello world. Push returns the new length of the array after that value is pushed into it. So before I had an empty array, I pushed in hello world and it returns 1. So 1 is what the heck. That's kind of not really useful, so you don't really see this happening that much, Whereas you do see this happening a lot. myArray.pop, setting it equal to something, because then you get that element you're popping off. Any questions? Cool. So, before I get into some other methods, I want to talk about arrays being complex values, okay? So, before we've read about our primitive values, right? Like strings and numbers and booleans and things like that. Complex values are different in many ways, but one way that I want to talk about right now is that you can mutate complex values, right? So let's say this. And you cannot mutate primitive values. My string is equal to hello, right? I'm going to console.log my string, okay? But before I console.log my string, I'm going to say my string at 0 is now going to be equal to j. So I want it to be Jello, right? Wrong. You can't do that. You cannot mutate strings. They are primitive, okay? This is a value. You can't change a little bit of the value, right? This doesn't work like that. This is immutable. Okay? However, if I had let my array equal to 1, 2, 3, a string 5, well, that's a stupid example. False, right? And false is at the end. And I console.log my array, I can say 0, 1, 2, 3. My array at 3 is now going to be equal to 5. And I can do that. You can mutate this array, okay? You can mutate it. That's what I mean by mutation. So another thing that I want you to think about, who thinks that this will be true? It's not true. It's not true, okay? There's a reason for this, and it's because they are complex values. So think of it like this. This array right here is living over here. This array over here is living over here. They are their own separate entities. Even though they're both arrays, they're both separate entities. They're different things. They're different, like, structures, okay? They live in different places. So they are not the same. They're not the same. They're just different arrays. They can hold the same values. They can hold nothing, or they can hold both false, but they're both different things. Think of these as completely different houses, right? Just something to be aware of. I'll get more into that later on why that's like that in our pass by reference, pass by value class, okay? I just want you all to be aware. So after that, let's talk about some other methods. So let's say I have let my array is going to be equal to true, null, 6. 6, 6, okay? So let's talk about some methods that you might be familiar with. Yep. This is also an array method, index of. Okay? Anybody confused? Do you want me to go over how index of works again? Cool, I won't. So it's the same thing as strings, okay? So that's the same thing over here. Then there's also, oh yeah, but before I continue, you know how this whole business about mutating arrays? This whole business, how I can change false? Push, pop, shift, and unshift, those are mutating the arrays. They'll never go back to how they were, okay? Just so you know. Like if I pop off something from the end of the array, my array is changed. It's different, okay? So just like this is a string method, myArray.slice is also a string method, okay? So if I console.log myArray.slice passed in, I get null, right? Because I started at index 1, included that, and ended at index 2, not including that. So I get that null. Now, slice also is a way, like if you don't pass anything into slice for strings, you start at the beginning and go to the end, right? What slice does with arrays, though, it returns a copy of the array, okay? This is a shallow copy of the array. Remember that, stick it in the back of your heads. I won't go into detail what that means right now, but it is a shallow copy. It is not the same array, okay? It's a different array. So that's slice. Now we have console.log myArray.reverse. And you can see that the array is reversed. However, reverse actually mutates the original array. So as you can see, I just ran reverse on this array, but my array has been changed forever, okay? Does this make sense to everybody? Now, let's say I had another array, and I said let other array is going to be equal to undefined and an object, right? Just like other data types that I wanted to get into my array. How do I get these things into my array? So we can do for let I equals 0, I is less than other array dot length I plus plus, and I can do my array dot push other array at I. So then if we console.log my array, we get undefined in the object in there, right? If we didn't do this, right? If we didn't do this, and we just did, my array dot push other array, what we would get is the entire array inside, okay? And this is a multi-dimensional array, which we'll talk about more tomorrow, okay? But, so this is how you push every element inside, and this is how you push the entire array. There's another method that will let you avoid doing this, right? It's dot concat, and you just pass in the array you want, and it just does it for you, okay? And concat, like slice, returns a copy. This is a new array. So if I console.log my array is still true null 66. Whereas this push changed what my array was. Whereas my array.concat other array, I can set to let new array equal to that. And as you can see, they're different. Whereas here, my array is the thing that's changed, and it can't go back. Okay? Who's got some questions? Guys.
I'm a little perplexed what we just did with the undefined array, other array.
Which part?
Okay, starting at 70, we'll go up to like 67 because. Okay,
Wasn't this where we were trying to see if we could mutate our data in the array? Or was this earlier?
This is just, I was just showing you index of, I was showing you slice and reverse, how reverse mutates. So then over here, I defined another array, right, with undefined and object. And then here, I said, let new array is going to be equal to my array, which is over here, dot concat passed in other array, right? What this does, what dot concat does, is it returns a brand new array with my array and everything inside of here added on to the back of this. So that's why when we do this, my array is still the same, and new array is a new array, but a combination of my array and other array. That's what concat does. Yeah.
So concat and slice are the only two that we talked about that return another array, right?
Yeah, slice and concat. That's... I don't think I'm missing anything that I'm supposed to tell you right now. But yeah, that's it for now. A great way to just make a copy of an array and mess around with it is to just do slice with nothing in it, right? Cool.
All right, can you just review the example up top one more time? The array.push, just the, yeah, like 76 and onward, row 76 and onwards.
Oh, this stuff? So
Yeah.
if I didn't do this, and I made a for loop, like, okay, I'm going to basically start at I, it's 0, and I'm going to go until I is less than other array.length is no longer true. So I'm setting this up to loop through this array, right?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think I actually meant 78, 79. It was just like the other way of joining the two
Oh,
together.
these?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
No, that was my fault. I said it the wrong way.
What this does is I am pushing into my array other array. Other array is what?
The undefined.
It's an array. It's one array. You can only define a variable with one value. And that one value is this one array. So when I push in other array, we know that it's one value, right? So what I'm actually pushing in is that whole array. So you can see these brackets here. So I'm actually pushing in the array. And what is the length of my array? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or is it 4? It's 4. Because we have 1, true. We have 2, null. We have 3, 666. And then we have 4, one array. Okay? This counts as 1. This is at index 3. Okay? 0, 1, 2, 3. The whole array. If I wanted to pull out that undefined, so this gives us that array, right? If I wanted to pull out undefined, like that. The object, like that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
All right, cool. Any other questions before I go into slides? The slides will reiterate everything. Any questions? Questions? Dope. Okay. So let me share my screen once more, and we will go into the slides. Everybody can still see my screen, right? Everyone sees the arrays? All right. Dope. So we'll talk about what an array is, the type of array, array.isArray, bracket access and bracket assignment, and then we could do .length property and some basic methods, okay? So an array is a list-like data structure in JavaScript. That's really what it is. Let numbers equal bracket 1, 2, 3. every element is separated by a comma, okay? Don't forget that. That's just basic syntax. Let names equal George, John, Thomas. Let a variable equal a value. Let mixed bag equal 30, true, apples, null, a variable. The values inside of an array are called elements. Everybody cool with this? Basic stuff, right? Type of an array is object. This is very confusing because arrays are actually not a data type in JavaScript. Arrays are actually objects, okay? So array.isArray is used to determine if something is actually an array or not. So let names is an array, George, John, Thomas. Console.log array.isArray and pass in names. So isArray, we access the global array object .isArray, open close parentheses. Anything you put inside of there as you pass as an argument it will spit out true or false based off of if it's an array or not. So on line 5 we do array.isArray of just a string, right? I am not an array. And we get false because it's not an array. Makes sense, right? Access elements in an array the same way you'd access a character in a string, using brackets and the index number corresponding to the position of the element inside the array, right? So let names equal George, John, Thomas. Console.log names of 0, names of 1, names of 2, names of 3. George, John, Thomas, undefined, right? I went over this before. At the 0th index, we have George. Names at 0, we get George. At the first index, we have John. Names at 1, we get John. Second index, we have Thomas. Names at 2, we get Thomas. That's all. Index 3 doesn't exist, so we get undefined. Any questions on that? Cool. So, bracket assignment. Use brackets and the assignment operator to assign new values to index positions in an array. So now I'm going to say names of 0 is going to be equal to Washington, names of 1 will be Adams, names of 2 will be Jefferson, and we'll console.log names, and we see we get an array of Washington, Adams, and Jefferson. This is called mutation. We are mutating the array. We are going into its index and changing it to something else, right? Any questions on this? I feel like this should make more sense to you than the fact that you can't do this with strings, right? Like, this actually kind of makes sense. Okay, I'm going to go in there at index 0. Nah, not anymore. Now it's going to be Washington, okay? This makes sense. I hope. Right? Yay, nay? Nice. Remember in an earlier lecture we said only complex types can be mutated? Changing the elements in an array is an example of mutating. So we can't mutate a string in the same way. Right? So let string equals brace, array of 0 is G, string of 0 is G. So as you see, the array got changed to the G, right? Before it was just BRACE, and we said array at 0 is now G, so now it's there. However, brace is still brace when we console log it, even though we're doing string at 0 is now equal to G, right? This you just can't do, because strings are primitive values. You just can't do that. You can't change this. JavaScript is already aware of what this is, versus this array that you're creating and you're putting things inside of. So JavaScript reads this string as a value that exists inside of the JavaScript universe. Whereas the array is something you created yourself. And you're put these primitive values inside of it. And so you're saying, okay, this B in my array, I'm changing this B to G. However, this brace is just a thing that exists already, and you can't just change that. You just can't do it. And you could try to think of it like that, if that makes more sense. I don't know. But just know that you can't do this. So arrays like strings have a dot length property. Okay? Simple enough. It doesn't read the letters in this. It reads the elements in the array, right? 1, 2, 3, we get 3. So let's talk about the push method. So push takes one or more elements and adds them to the end of the array. Push returns the new length of the array. So let names equal George, John, Thomas. Let new length equal names.pushJames. Console.log names, console.log new names. New length. So as you can see, names changed, right? George John Thomas, now we have James at the end. And new length is 4, because 1, 2, 3, 4. It returns the length after we push James into names. Any questions? Dope. Alright. The pop method removes one element from the end of the array and it returns the removed element. So let's see what this is about. Let names equal George John Thomas. Let Jefferson equal names.pop. So as you can see, Thomas was taken off of names in this line, on line 6. Thomas gets taken off. But that value is returned by pop and it gets stored in the variable Jefferson. So when we console log Jefferson, we get Thomas. Does that make sense? Cool. So the shift method works like pop, but it removes the first element instead. It's called shift because the indices for every element in the array are shifted over by 1. So we have let names George John Thomas, let Washington equal names.shift. Right? So names, as you can see, George is not there anymore, but shift returns that name after it removes it, right? So we can store that in the Washington variable. This works the same way as pop, except it's at the front. Does this make sense? And the unshift method. So unshift adds one or more elements to the front of the array. Let names equal George John Thomas. New length equal names.unshift King George III. Console.log names. Console.log new names. Like push, we get 4. And you see King George III comes before George, John, and Thomas. Does this make sense? These methods, like these are a lot, right? Like you have push, pop, shift, and unshift. They all kind of do the same thing if you really think about it. But they all are different, right? They all clearly do different things. So it's kind of a lot to remember right now, but you'll be using these methods a lot. So if you ever get stuck and forget what something does, look back at your notes or go to MDN, honestly, Mozilla's documentation. Because like I did before, right? It just shows you all these examples and it explains what all of these optional arguments they take are. You know, it's really useful, okay? So the index of method is also an array method and it works the same way as the string method. So as you can see, names.index of George is 0, right? Because George is here. Names.index of Alexander, that doesn't exist, so we get -1. I won't stick around too much on that. So slice is also an array method and it works the same way as the string method of the same name. Let names equal George John Thomas. Let one-term precedence equal names.slice of 1, 2. Console.log one-term precedence, console.log names. So as you can see, what we get is a new array because names is still George John Thomas, right? Even though we sliced out starting at index 1, including that value, ending at index 2, not including that value, so we get an array with John. The actual slice method works the same way with strings, right? Does everybody agree with that? It works the same way with strings. However, it's going to return a new array. It's not going to alter names, which is important to remember, okay? Hell yeah. All right. Slice is also an array method. It works the same way. So as you can see, let names equal George John Thomas. Let names copy equal names.slice and pass nothing into it. So a names copy will be this whole thing. Names copy of 2 will be Paul. And then names copy.push Ringo. So as you can see, names is George John Thomas still. We made a copy of that names. We changed index 2, which was 0, 1, 2, Thomas, to Paul. And then we pushed Ringo into copy. So now I made another array based off of what I had before without changing what I had before. But now you can see that I'm talking about a different group of people. In my opinion, a more important group of people. Am I right? Anyways, That's the slice method. Oh, I didn't show you this method. I didn't show you includes. However, don't worry about it because includes is extremely straightforward. Dot includes takes a value and returns true if the value is in there. Easy, right? Let names equal George John Thomas. Console.log names.includes George. Console.log names.includes Alexander. True, false. Very straightforward. Read it out loud, right? Does names include George? True. Does names include Alexander? False. Very easy. You can think of this as the same thing as index of, right? If something's in this array, index of will return its index. If it's not in the array, it will return -1. This is just a more like explicit way of doing this, right? Just true or false. Cool. Any questions on includes? Pretty straightforward, right? Nice, you guys are the best. Dot reverse method. So reverse, as I showed you, mutates, changes the original array, reversing the order of its elements. So if I just do names.reverse and I console.log names, I get Thomas, John, George. And names will never be the same. Okay? This is pretty simple. This is pretty straightforward. So,
For reverse method, does it just reverse the order automatically, or is it possible to randomize the order?
no, you don't randomize the order. Reverse, I mean, let's do this together, right? I'm pretty sure it just, like, does it itself. Let's go...
A becomes Z, Y becomes B, X becomes
That's like
Z.
the sort method. There's a sort method that I don't want to get into right now because it's a little bit too much information for one day, but let's see exactly what array takes, right? I mean, reverse takes. Method reverses an array in place. The first element becomes the last element, and the last array element becomes the first. So, yeah, it doesn't take anything. It doesn't take anything. So, what you're talking about would be the sort method. So if you want to look into the sort method on your own, by all means, go for it, because sorting is extremely important. But the sort method actually takes, if you don't pass it anything, it just does something by default, but it actually takes a function, and you can kind of define how you want things sorted. But that gets vastly complex, and I don't really want to talk about that right now. If that makes sense. But yeah, reverse just like really easy, just beginning, end. Are switched. Any questions?
Guess it's time for problems.
Everybody good? I hope. Alright. So let me stop.